We'll have Board of Appeals officers elections for the chair, vice chair, secretary. We'll approve the March 19th Board of Appeals minutes. And then we will hear Appeal 26-02, variance for Dwayne Damon of 63A School Street. Property owner and petitioner is seeking a variance for map 102, lot 76, zoned urban residential. For each case, the proponents will be asked to proceed first and then be available to answer questions from the board. After all proponents have spoken, the opponents may make their presentations and then be questioned by the board. After all opponents have spoken, each side will be given an opportunity for a brief rebuttal. This meeting is being tape recorded, and it is very difficult to hear what is being said when multiple people speak at the same time. Please refrain from interrupting other speakers. Questions should be addressed through the chair. We ask that each person offering testimony come forward to the microphone. Of course, I lose my place, and begin by giving his or her name and address. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinance or ordinances. Applicants for variances must specifically address and prove compliance for each of the 4 undue hardship criteria, or I think in this one we're talking about a variance. Following a decision on an application or appeal, toward the end of the meeting, the board will prepare a written decision indicating its finding of fact and conclusions of law that will be mailed to the applicant within 7 days of the board's vote. The applicant is free to stay during this written decision process, but it is not required to. If your appeal is granted, you must obtain a building permit from the code enforcement office. If anybody wishes to appeal the board's decision, you must do so to Superior Court within 45 days. Are there any questions about what I've just read? Okay, so roll call. Craig Sterling.
Present.
Dan Nichols.
Present.
Holly Francis.
Present.
Paul Volbonsic. Absent. Courtney Barnett. Present. Gary Baca.
Yep.
Michael Wiseman.
Yep.
2 hour fire left. We have Ben, sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
Ben Plant.
Ben Plant,
Counsel for the
our
board.
town attorney for the town of Gorham. And to the far right, Scott Dvorak, code enforcement officer. All right, so roll call, pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Board of Appeals officers election. We will be electing a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. Open the floor for discussion on, we start with secretary. Any comments? Nominations? You had to ask that question. I'm not even 100% sure who the previous secretary was.
Me. You were.
Probably should have just asked this. So, Dan?
And I'd be willing to do that again.
Make that motion.
You nominate Dan?
I nominate Dan.
I'll second that.
Second that. Any other nominations? Nope.
Are you willing to go to chair?
Probably not.
No, I'm at Courtney.
Pablo, you can come and sit down. We just started discussion on elections.
Oh, my apologies, I'm late.
Were you looking for other nominations for secretary?
Yes, for sec. Yeah, sec.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
do one at a time. I probably should have explained the way I was kind of going through it. But yeah, I think we'll do secretary, then vice chair, then chair, or unless you think you should do the opposite. Craig, I think you are the longest tenured member here, so I will
I think usually people like to get the chair out of the way first.
chair first. All right.
Doesn't matter though.
I nominate you, Courtney.
I would second that.
The natural progression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pay grade is better.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. I don't have any real discussion points, but I will not be here next month. That's the only thing I'll say. But other than that.
Anyone else?
I move that nominations close.
All in favor? I'll abstain since I'm the only one.
In favor? Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Move on to, I guess, vice chair. Any nominations for vice chair?
I would nominate Powell.
Second.
Any discussion? Pavel, thoughts?
Earlier though.
All right. Good. Okay.
I'm good.
Any other nominations? All right. All in favor? All opposed? Since it was unanimous, not worth asking. And back to secretary.
I renominate Dave.
I'll second. Any other nominations? All in favor? Quick. Opposed? All right. We will move on to the approval of the October 16th, or I'm sorry, yeah, the October 16th. That's not right. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Approval of the March 19th, 2026 Board of Appeals minutes.
And make a motion that the minutes of the March 19th meeting, 2026, be accepted as presented.
Second?
Any discussion?
Yes. Can I make my comment?
Please.
So on the page 3, the third sentence, I don't think that some of the points I made were accurately represented there.
Is this Craig, sorry to interrupt, just for clarification, the one which says Mr. Sterling explained?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So this is, this is what I'd like it to read. I pointed out that in both his written testimony and oral presentation, the applicant acknowledged that somehow the subcontractor got the setback incorrect. He also acknowledged that he trusted the subcontractor to get the measurements correct, but as the general contractor, he did not verify the sub's work. Discussion ensued around the use of GPS for the excavation, but C.A. Tanberg, the excavator, did not provide testimony, and Mr. McDonald could not verify even if GPS was used. He did acknowledge that he had originally established the setback line and could have reestablished it prior to pouring the foundation. That's a revision I'd like to add to the record.
Your proposed revision? Any discussion on Craig's proposed revision to the minutes from March 19th? I'd like to ask the town attorney, is that something that you can edit?
I can, yes. I don't have a Word version of the minutes themselves, but I'd be happy to make that change.
You don't have this at all.
I do. I think the electronic version that I got was a PDF, so I can make that change. I just need to get the minutes in a format that I can edit.
Craig, do you have what you would like it to say that we okayed written down?
That what?
Do you have it written down?
Yes.
In a format? we
Yeah, I
can
can give you a copy
All
of
right.
it,
Okay.
if everybody
Make
is
it easy.
okay with the word.
Chairman have to come back and re-sign that?
I think the board can make a motion to amend the findings, or excuse me, not the findings, but the minutes consistent with Mr. Sterling's proposed amendments. The board can vote to adopt those changes, and then I'm happy to make those edits to the minutes.
I'll make that motion to accept Mr. Sterling's edits of the minutes from last meeting.
And I'll second.
Could I ask Craig one question?
Yep.
Craig, did you reference the video when you were looking at the amended
Yes.
section?
Yep.
Okay. Then I have no concerns. Apologies for that. So there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes with Craig's amendment. Was there a second?
I'll second.
Dan seconds. All in favor? All opposed?
I'll abstain. I wasn't here.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Holly. Ben, does that work? Do you have what you need?
I think so. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. So the March 19 Board of Appeals minutes have technically not been approved yet. Is that right? Until they are
Edited.
edited.
I think the board, as I understand it, has just motioned to approve the minutes subject to Mr. Sterling's proposed changes. So
Okay.
I'll make the changes, and then I don't think the board needs to take an additional vote to approve the minutes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, on to Appeal 26-02, the variance for Dwayne Damon of 63A School Street. Property owner and petitioner is seeking a variance for map 102, lot 76, zone urban residential. Thank you, Mr. Damon. I'm assuming you're Mr. Damon or his
Yes,
representative?
I am,
Mr.
Mr.
Damon.
Damon. Oh, checking, yep, the mic works.
So to start, Mr. Damon, I think it would be helpful for this board if you could sort of walk us through your setback variance request.
Absolutely, I'll be glad to. Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Dwayne Damon, and I am the property owner of 63A School Street. I'm requesting a setback variance to allow for the construction of a small detached garage. Due to significant constraints of my property, with a 30-foot Portland Water District easement to the north, church land and parking lot to the east, there's no practical way for me to build this structure without the requested relief. And before I address each of the 4 criteria for making this request, I'd like to take a moment to orient you with my property lot, which is shown in your site plan reference attachment 7. And I have updated attachment 7 with some notes that I'm going to pass out now, if that's okay.
Yes, please. That is fine. Thank you.
This is exactly the same as the attachment. It's just that we have some markings on it, makes it a little easier
Thank
when I
you.
speak to,
Thank you.
You? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, so let me just walk through this real quickly. If you look at the top, it's the north. That's where the Portland Water District easement is. And on the right-hand side of the page is east, and that also is the rear property line. And that's where the Congregational Church land and parking lot is located, on the rear of my property. On the bottom of the page is south. That's 57 School Street. And on the left-hand side is west. That's School Street itself. And again, I know some of these aren't really shown on the map, but that's the location of them. I would like to point out 65 School Street. That's the building that's on the left-hand side, right on with the road frontage. And that we have to actually drive past that building through the paved driveway that you'll see there depicted with the red arrows towards 63A School Street. And then the drive turns to gravel and it turns to the left or the north and proceeds down to the back of my lot. You'll see the proposed location of the garage is depicted with red dashed lines. And that gives you a little bit of an orientation as I speak to the 4 criteria. Reasonable return. The property cannot reasonably accommodate a typical accessory structure like a garage without a variance. I currently rely on a temporary plastic carport, which is not a suitable long-term solution. I'm looking to replace that with a permanent structure that is safer, more durable, and more appropriate for the neighborhood. I own an electric vehicle that needs protection from the elements, maybe branches that are falling. And now, currently, there's no safe or practical location for me to store it. With a 30-foot easement on the north, church parking lot on the east, I do not have the option to purchase more land. Without the variance, I cannot make reasonable use of the property in a way that is typical for residential use. Unique circumstances. This hardship is due to the unique characteristics of my lot. Very small, difficult to maneuver. The lot has no road frontage, and the property is constrained by a 30-foot easement on the north and a church parking lot on the east. This combined conditions significantly limit where the structure could be placed and are not typical of most properties in the neighborhood. Because of this, the need for the variance is specific to my property and not general neighborhood conditions. No impact to the neighborhood. The proposed garage is modest in size, designed only to meet basic needs. It will be used to store my vehicle and provide accessible storage space in a small loft area, addressing a safety concern as my wife and I are getting older. The pull-down attic stairs are becoming more difficult to use. Replacing the existing temporary carport with a permanent structure will improve the overall appearance of the property and the neighborhood. Additionally, the location of the garage, adjacent to a parking lot and a utility easement, minimizes any impact to the neighborhood properties, neighboring properties. This will improve the property and not alter the neighborhood character. Not self-created. The lot size, layout, lack of road frontage were all existing conditions prior to my ownership. I'm simply trying to work within the constraints to make reasonable use of the property. In closing, I'd like to add that I have contracted BH2M, a local surveying company, to professionally locate and mark the property boundaries and proposed 5-foot setbacks to ensure accuracy and compliance should you approve my variance request. Thank you for your time and your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Damon. Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Damon?
I've got a few questions.
Yes.
So is this structure going to be on a concrete foundation?
Yes.
Okay. And is it a 1 or 2 vehicle garage?
One vehicle.
1 vehicle. Okay. Are you going to be running power to it?
Yes, I am. I have additional photos here of the
That would be
structure
great.
if anybody, it would be helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Damon. Thank you.
All right, so yeah, to answer your question, it is a single garage on a foundation. You'll see there in the pictures, you know, what it looks like on the front page. The second page and the third page depict what it looks like inside, and it really just shows that it meets bare basic needs. It barely fits the car, and it does have an inside stairwell to allow us to go upstairs to the loft. And I feel that, you know, basically that's the entire garage taken up with that. You'll see there's, you know, minimum variance for door opening, front and back. It's as tight as I can get it.
Do many of the other homes in the neighborhood have garages?
Yes, they do.
Additional question. Where is your temporary garage?
Carport?
Carport, yeah. Where is that located on this map?
Right. So we recently had to move it because there were some ash trees that had to be taken down. But where it usually sits is exactly where the garage structure is proposed to be built.
So is there, can't tell the way the house, what's at the house, but on the east side of the house, up to the deck that's identified,
Yes.
did you consider, is there room there?
There isn't. There is not enough room there. You see the boundary is right there. And not only that, it's not really accessible with it to the drive. That's a back lawn, and the grade goes up about 2 to 3 feet off where the property is, where the proposed garage is going to be. There's a grade. But even that being said, if you were to put the garage in there, I'd be still asking for the variance.
Yeah, I mean, if that's, if that's to scale, it looks like,
It is all to scale.
okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Even if you moved it adjacent,
Yeah,
you'd still need a variance.
I would,
Yeah, at least on one side.
at least on one side.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does the current gravel drive where it meets the house there, is that a parking spot, a garage, or what is that on the north side of the building?
On the north side. All right, so on the north side, there's a gravel driveway, if you will, where I back down or drive down and park my car in the temporary carport.
Yep.
And then you'll see there's a basement there. I say 8-foot doors. Do you see that note? So that I literally back up and leave things in the basement. It's 2 doors that open up, and I can actually drive right into the basement with lawnmowers, motorcycles, and that sort of thing. So that area needs to be left open in order to access the basement.
Okay.
But did I answer your question?
Yes. I was more speaking of the northwest side of the building, so where it says gravel drive on
Oh,
the map.
Right.
Is that a garage there currently, or?
There is what used to be a horse stall.
Okay.
It is a garage for my wife's car. My truck cannot fit into that garage for 2 reasons. One, my truck's much larger, and 2, it actually weighs too much because that particular area where the garage is over a basement. And so the car is supported over, with a basement underneath it, and my truck won't fit there.
I have a question for Mr. Dvorak. Would he still need a variance if he didn't do a concrete foundation and he did a gravel pad with a shed-style garage on it?
You would still need it. The shed itself would be a structure.
Okay.
Good evening, good evening, Mr. Damon.
Yes.
I'm trying to picture in my mind your property, because I drive by it literally 4 times a day.
A lot of people do.
Yeah. To the north, is there a stream or is that more of a vernal pool? Or am I thinking of a different house?
No, that is the house. There's a culvert that's located quite a little ways in. The water runs down through the culvert, through the church property and on down.
Yeah, thank you. So having said that, do we have to be concerned at all, or do you have to be concerned at all with DEP or EPA with water runoff or anything like that?
No.
No, okay.
No, that's quite a little distance from my lot, and I won't be changing the landscape whatsoever.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So I have another question, trying to move the proposed structure in my head. I just want to get at, has every other option been considered? For instance, you show the 8-foot doors going into the basement, right?
Yes, correct.
So if this was moved 10 feet more, the proposed location, to the south and also to the west, could it be almost attached to that part of the house that has the 8-foot doors?
Right. That's a good question. If you look at the drive where it says gravel drive and the L-shaped 63A School Street, the actual building, there's an 6 foot or 7 foot drop off between the garage or the gravel drive on the right-hand side of the building, or actually the left going into the garage, and down back. And so if I cannot drive anywhere other than where it says the existing gravel, and if I were to move the garage towards the south, I would have a hard time getting into it, if that makes sense. And I'll come up, if it's okay, I'll come a little close and just show you on the map what I'm talking about. So everybody can see it. This right here, this little circle, that's 7 feet up in the air, from here down to that. So when I drive down, I'm coming from here all the way down 7 feet to that. And so if I move the garage here, when I'm driving that down, I would be able to actually get into the garage. There's a big retaining wall here for that 7 foot drop right here. Now, I wouldn't physically be able to that.
So I'm looking at the last page of 11A. Is that a photo of what we're looking at?
Where I took that picture is standing at the bottom, you'll see that it's 7 foot drop. It's a full basement, because it goes from the basement being able to drive in on one side to right next to it, a basement I can drive out, pretty much. So there's a significant drop in elevation. On top of that, I would just add that I currently store a couple of boats out in my backyard, and one of them is a catamaran, and that's a good 8 to 10, feet wide. And if I were to move the garage, I wouldn't be able to even get that out of the backyard, and I have no other place to store it. There's very limited access to my back property for anything wide. Even with that garage proposed there, it's going to be very close, tight quarters.
Question for Scott. For Scott, what are the setbacks in that zone?
They are, he's in urban residential, so the setbacks are front and rear are 15 feet.
Front and the rear 15?
Yes.
And the sides?
I mean, not the front, side and rear, apologize. Side and rear is 15 feet.
Any additional questions?
Thank you for the
Go ahead.
good photos.
Yep.
I didn't get a paper version of this, so this is my first time seeing those. Yeah. got 'em now.
If you're looking at the photos, it basically walks you from the front of the road past 65 School Street on the first photo, and then shows you, turning to the left, what it looks like. And by the way, one of the photos has a red line, straight red line on it. That's my property line between 63 and 65. And we drive literally right over it just to go into our, out back. It's only 8 to 12 feet wide right there. It's very, very narrow. But that depicts the property line in the front of my property. And then it continues around the back, and you'll see a shot looking towards the east and another one looking towards the west. And also, I think one of the last shots is looking towards the south. And I think the last photo has a picture of the carport, which is temporarily on my backyard, in the backyard. It's the white tarp. I think it's in there. I can look.
Have you or your contractor had any communication with the Portland Water District?
We have not, but if there needs to be, we certainly can. I will point out that our property is about 2 to 3 feet higher than when the property line is. So there's a natural drop off right there. And we'll only be digging 4 feet. So probably, most likely, never more than 2 feet down into the earth, that's on the lower level where the church and the easement would be. Because we sit up higher. Yeah.
Additional questions for Mr. Damon? Okay. Board discussion?
I would love it if our attorney could explain to us the cannot yield a reasonable return standard. Just give us a little bit more information about what we're looking at on that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And maybe if it would be helpful to the board, I know this isn't your first rodeo, but I can suggest sort of a framework for your deliberations.
Sure.
I know you did this a month ago, so you're familiar with variances and how this works. But as the applicant has just explained, he is requesting what I'll call an undue hardship variance from the board. And the town's code and state law requires you to find 4 factors are met in order to grant that variance. And I'm sure this is consistent with past practice. What I would recommend is you go standard by standard, debate, take a vote on each. As you know, if the board finds that all 4 standards are met, then the variance is granted. If you find that 1 or more of the standards aren't met, then the variance is not granted. I can do this sort of one of 2 ways. I'd like to give the board, as has been requested, sort of a high-level overview of each of the standards and explain, generally speaking, what the courts have analyzed when they've considered each of the various standards, to give you folks a sense of what you should be looking at, what the analysis is. I can walk the board through sort of a high-level overview of each standard now, or maybe it would make sense for me to start with my overview. The board can then deliberate, take a vote, can move to the next standard, and then I can give a high-level overview of that standard. Does that make sense as an approach?
Yeah, I think the second one makes the most sense.
Okay. Okay, great. So the first prong of the analysis, if you will, is that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. And I'll read some language from a decision of the Maine Supreme Judicial Court, sort of outlining how the court views this standard and what a board must find in order for the standard to be met. So what the court has said is that the reasonable return prong of the undue hardship test is met where strict application of the zoning ordinance would result in the practical loss of all beneficial use of the land. Reasonable return is not the maximum return that could be afforded by a property, and economic proof that no reasonable return is possible is not required as an evidentiary standard. So as I've always interpreted it, and in plain language, the essential question is whether the application of, in this case, a setback requirement to this property and this proposed garage is going to result in a loss of most or all of the property's value or most or all of the beneficial use of the land itself. So I think fair to say that the courts have viewed this particular prong as a relatively high hurdle to clear. From my perspective, I think some instances where a court has found that this particular standard is met are, for instance, if a landowner has tried to sell the property and has been unsuccessful in doing so because a variance hasn't been granted or because a variance would be needed to develop the lot, if you will, or if the lot couldn't be used for any purpose. So, for instance, there is at least one case from the law court where there was a lot that couldn't be developed within the shoreland zone with a single-family structure or a structure generally. And the court said that the recreational use you could make of that shorefront lot was sufficient for there to be a beneficial use of the property and a basis to deny the variance. So that's how the courts have viewed this particular prong in the analysis. And I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Does the fact that granting this variance and allowing the structure raise the value of the house count?
Again, yeah, I think some of the language that I just read to you, what the courts have essentially said is that reasonable return is not necessarily equivalent to maximum return. So if there is some attendant loss in value as a result of the denial of a variance, that isn't necessarily a basis to find this particular standard met. So I think generally speaking, that's how the courts have viewed that particular issue.
Any other questions for the town attorney? So I think we're discussing the first criteria that we need to meet here, that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. Any board discussion?
So I'm convinced personally by the safety argument that the homeowners made. I think that this house is primarily intended as a residential property, and I think that the factors that make a safe residential property mean something different in Maine than they do in other parts of the country, especially given the last winter that we had here. Looking at the photographs of the property, I am convinced, and as the applicant mentioned, they're getting up there in age, and I can see a situation very easily where mobility challenges make it so that they effectively cannot use a vehicle, which would deprive them realistic access to the property. So for that reason, I think that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted.
I'm hoping that everyone on the board will express a view on this before we get to a vote. I like to know what other people are thinking. And I think the applicant should know also. Can't force people to do that, but.
Well, I think from my perspective, I've got to agree with Powell. And I think also that if I heard the applicant correctly, there's basically an existing carport there now. It just is not designed and structurally safe for you to put your vehicle in it. So he's really not asking for anything that isn't already there. And I think a 5-foot setback variance request,
10 feet.
10 feet rather, is not unreasonable in this particular situation. The lot is very, very small, got limited ways that he could put this building and where he could put this building. So I think at this point, that's where I'm coming from right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're past the point where you can live in Maine without having access to a vehicle, and four-season access to a vehicle is, I think, critical to a residential property.
I agree with your safety line of thought also.
Craig, did you want to provide your, because you mentioned wanting to hear from everybody. Did you want to?
Sure. I mean, I would love to. I understand the request makes sense. And if we didn't have to follow statute, I'd be all in. But as I understand the language and the previous decisions, it says that you can't get a reasonable return on the property, on the whole property. And and it doesn't say maximum return. I mean, people who don't have a garage or a garage in the place they want it might definitely want that. But it doesn't mean that they can't get a reasonable return on the whole property, as I think Ben was describing. And that has to be what guides our decisions. We can't, we can't go around what the language provides, in my view.
Thank you, Craig. Could I ask the town attorney a question?
Any questions for me of the board members?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you ask any questions of?
Is it okay if I ask you a question
Oh,
at this
yeah,
point?
no, of course. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. But
Yeah,
I was just, ask permission,
Fire
ask
away.
permission, right? Is there any case law that you're aware of that pertains to safety, as Pavel had sort of referenced? Or definitely referenced?
I will say that at least with respect to this particular standard, from my perspective, the courts have been focused on, whether or not the lack of a variance would deprive the landowner or the property really of any value or any beneficial use. So in the context of that analysis, I don't know that safety has often been a consideration that's come up in the law court's decisions. I think their analysis, again, has been focused on economic return in value, as the language of the standard suggests.
Sounds like might be a question of first impression.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
And then if you add in terms of economics, would this property as it exists now yield a reasonable return on their investment? I dare say in the town of Gorham, yes, without any variance. Because we're looking at the whole property.
Any additional comments, discussion?
You take one. Andy.
Any additional comments or questions? Sorry, I'll speak into the mic.
I think the word reasonable is so subjective. Could be what's reasonable to you, to me, to him, 3 different opinions. I don't even know why they put that in there, reasonable.
I think that it would be very difficult, in my opinion, to sell without a structure to put a car in.
Well, I disagree. There are many residences in Gorham that don't have a garage, and people are buying them. And how long have you lived there? How many? 40 years?
I'll come to the mic if I could just expand on that, though, because I know this probably is running through your mind. Why now? 40 years. 2 reasons, really. Well, one is you can ask my wife. For 40 years, I've always wanted a garage. But 2, we couldn't afford it. I was a single income with 3 children, trying to put them through school and college, and we just simply couldn't afford to do anything at that time. Now that I am older, I finally come in, to where I could actually afford to do this. And then secondly, this is my first new car I've ever owned myself, for me to drive. I've always had used egg beaters, the last one being a 2002 Ford 150. And if it sat outside, it wasn't such a big deal. It had 200,000 miles on it. The car I'm driving now is a very expensive, brand new vehicle, electric vehicle, and it needs to be taken care of. And then secondly, we are getting older, and this driving, in the snow or shoveling off carports is just too much work.
Ben, does it matter at all and I don't know the answer to this, what the setbacks were 40 years ago?
Well, I would say potentially, but maybe not necessarily in the context of this particular standard. Maybe this is jumping the gun a little bit, but one of the factors that the courts have considered in assessing the last standard, the self-created hardship standard, is knowledge of the zoning ordinance. For instance, if you recently bought a lot and were aware of the restrictions that apply to the lot, perhaps that would be a factor in the board determining whether or not the hardship was self-created. Once upon a time, the court said that factor was determinative if you had knowledge of the zoning ordinance, or at least if the court could infer sort of constructive knowledge of the zoning ordinance, that would be enough for the court to find that you had a self-created hardship and didn't meet that particular prong of the analysis. The courts have done away with that rule and from my perspective, adopted a more flexible, holistic approach to analyzing self-created hardship. But one of the things that could potentially, or that the courts have considered in the context of that prong, is whether or not the property was bought when these setbacks existed, and the landowner, knew of that.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to vote on the first criteria, that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted.
So moved. Second?
All those in favor? All those opposed? So criteria 1 has passed.
Okay, so the second prong of the analysis is that the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions in the neighborhood. And so, I mean, you're essentially considering whether there are features or conditions that are unique to this particular lot, this particular property, and are not common to other lots within the neighborhood. And so some of the language that the court has adopted to analyze this particular standard is the unique circumstances requirement is met when the hardship suffered by the lot owner is not a hardship that is common with other lots in the neighborhood. And so I think the classic example is if you had a landowner within a subdivision who was coming to the board and arguing that he should be entitled to an undue hardship variance because his lot was very small, but all other lots within the subdivision were the exact same size, that might be a circumstance where substandard lot size isn't unique to the lot that's before the board, but is rather, something that's common to other lots in the neighborhood. I think as you've heard, the landowner has identified a few different things that from his perspective make this property unique. It's a back lot, so on and so forth. So if the board has any questions about that standard, happy to answer.
Any questions for the town attorney? And Holly, sorry to put you on the spot. Did you vote yea or nay in the last? Yeah, okay, thank you.
I'll add to that I don't think every property in the town of Gorham has an easement on one side and a church parking lot on the other, so I think that definitely makes it unique in that sense. And not every lot already has an easement to drive behind another home to get to your home.
In addition to the size of the lot, I think that the grade of the lot, just judging from the photos the applicant submitted, makes it very, very challenging to relocate a usable structure anywhere else. And so I am also convinced that this is due to the unique circumstances of the property.
Anyone else? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion that the need.
Yeah, no, I have one more
Go
comment.
ahead. Greg.
So what is unique to this property and the need for a variance is the size of the lot and the proposed structure, unfortunately. To a structure, whatever, 10 by 14 structure would not require a variance. There's room enough for that. Unfortunately, that doesn't meet the goals of the property owner. But, yeah, that's, there are unique features certainly to the property, but the need for the variance is because of the size of the proposed building and the available land to build on.
I don't know that I agree that a smaller usable property, building for the use that's proposed would fit without any kind of variance.
Well, if you're proposing a 20 by 24 and you need a 10-foot variance on two sides, then a 20 minus 10 would be 10, and a 24 minus 10 would be 14. That's where I got the 10 by 14, in that location.
Would it be appropriate if I make a comment?
Please.
My vehicle won't fit through a 10-foot door. Or I couldn't open the doors up once I was inside. So just to make that, I am trying to go with a bare bones minimum to allow for me to physically get the car in. It's a very large vehicle. It's not a compact car. And if it was, then I would definitely design this maybe a little differently, but it is a large vehicle. And I have just enough room to open up the doors with it being that size, along with adding the stairs to go up to the loft. So I did consider trying to make it as small, any smaller if I could.
So I put up a garage on a shed-style garage this year, and a single car width, you can't fit a car in anything. You can't fit a car in a 10-foot width garage. You just can't do it. So I just don't think that's realistic for the problem that's faced on this premises. You could build a 10 by 14 shed, and you'd have a very good shed that doesn't actually meet the use that's required to make this property accessible, so.
Yeah, I understand that, but the constraint that we're dealing with is the statute, not accommodating what appellants are looking for. Although that would be our desire in every case, we don't have that authority, in my view.
Given that I've previously stated that I'm convinced that the property needs vehicle access and storage, four-season vehicle access and storage in Maine to yield a reasonable return, I am convinced that the circumstances of the property, the slope, the size of it, the easements on each side, its position behind another house, make it so that you could not, otherwise, there's no other way you could fit a building that could store a vehicle on that premises.
Very unique.
Ben, generally, how is unique circumstances defined? I think you sort of went into this earlier, but apologies. I'm wondering if you can repeat yourself there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the courts have established that there can be a number of factors and features that could make a property unique. And I think that can be, that the terrain or the landscape may be different on a particular property than it is generally in the neighborhood. So, I think the courts have looked at that relatively broadly and on a case-by-case basis. And to some extent, I think it's a little bit fact-specific, right? Because you're looking at the characteristics of a neighborhood and generally speaking what those are, and then looking at a specific lot and determining if, there are features that make that lot different than the neighborhood generally speaking, right? So I think it's a a fact-intensive inquiry, but I think the board is identifying things that could arguably be determined to find this particular property unique, or could be factors that make this property unique.
Any comments or additional questions for town attorney, code enforcement? Anybody?
No other board members going to weigh in on this?
I mean, look, I think the property in question is unique on its face. I think the limited space that the property has generally is, and sort of the back lot location makes it unique. I don't know that that equates to unique circumstances. That's sort of what I'm weighing in my mind currently, but that's generally what I'm looking at when I'm trying to figure out whether I think it meets the standard of unique circumstances of the property. But please, if anybody wants to try to sway me
No, I
one
think-
way or another, please chime
My
in.
only thoughts are, and I don't want to repeat what's already been said, so I'm not going to, but I think that, again, knowing the vehicle that he drives, to try to put it in a 10 by 14 foot building would be impossible. I think the vehicle itself is probably longer than 14 feet. And so, because I have an electric vehicle also. So, I really believe in my mind that the circumstances on this particular piece of property that we're talking about, 63A School Street, they are unique for all the reasons previously stated.
And I'm not sure that I consider the vehicle necessarily relevant when I'm making my sort of determination here, but I do look at the sort of where the property is located and the right-of-way that abuts the property. I think there are the unique factors that could make it meet the standard, but anybody else, thoughts?
So would it make any difference in your thinking if this was a more conventional property and there was a house on the north, or whatever it is, the north and the east side that also had 15-foot setbacks?
Potentially, because if you're talking about more residential abutters, I think Mr. Damon has provided in his documentation support from a few neighbors here for his ability to build a garage as well. So I think, depending facts and circumstances, right? Like if he had neighbors that were against him and, against him, his efforts here, I think that would certainly weigh in. But where he is, it's a unique situation in that it's not like there's a house right next door to where he's trying to build a garage, I guess is my point, Greg. And I don't think that's sort of relevant to the standard as we're discussing it now, but I think the property is in a unique location, has limited land, and as the town attorney mentioned, is that the courts have looked at this broadly speaking, not necessarily narrowly tailored, so.
Can I make a motion that this criteria has been passed for acceptance of the variance? If that's worded correctly?
Before you make a motion, is there any further discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion. I think
Motion to accept criteria number 2, I guess we call that?
that the need for the variance.
Satisfied it for the variance passing?
Seconded.
Incorrect English, but
Seconded?
You worded.
All in favor? All opposed?
I'll abstain.
You abstain? All right, the third criteria, that the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
So the courts have looked to a couple different factors to flesh out what the essential character of the locality is. And what the courts have said is that that determination is fact-specific but informed by a few things. One is the uses that are allowed in the zoning district. So as I understand it, this is in the urban residential district within 300 section 1-1.31. There are a number of different identified permitted uses, one of which is 1 or 2 family dwellings. Another factor that the court looks to is the identified purposes of the district within the section of the code governing the urban residential district. You have a purposes section. If the board would like me to read that, I'm more than happy to do that. And one of the other factors that the court has directed boards to consider is the uses, structures, and dimensions of setbacks and other features already existing in the area of the property. And what I will say is that the courts have said that you can't analyze this factor based on other nonconformities that exist in the area. I assume there probably are other nonconforming garages within the urban residential district. Essentially the courts have said that factor is not determinative of whether or not the grant of a variance would alter the essential characteristic of the locality or would be consistent with it. And your ordinance does say as well in the definition of variance that other nonconformities aren't something that would, turn the board's analysis, if you will, of this particular factor. One other question that the courts have addressed is what is the locality itself? In other words, what is the neighborhood? Again, I mean, this is a pretty fact-intensive inquiry, and it's really going to depend on where the property is. But I think the courts have opined that, one factor that you could look to is, or consider, is essentially the location of the district itself within which the property is located as something that could broadly be considered the locality or the neighborhood. And of course, you folks have local knowledge of School Street and what's around it and what would be considered that neighborhood. So I think that's also a factor to consider in terms of what you're defining as the locality.
Discussion?
All right, I'll jump on the grenade. This isn't some concrete brutalist parking garage that we're trying to put up in, town center. It's just a normal garage in a normal residential area. I think this prong is easy and straightforward. As I look around it, it's surrounded by a church and a church parking lot. I can't see how this would be out of place in any neighborhood in Gorham. Just looking at the structure as well, it's standard vehicle garage. So I have no concerns that it will have any impact on the essential character of the locality whatsoever.
And if I could just add what Powell's said, I'm not even sure you could see the building from the street driving by it. I don't think you'll even notice it. So it's not this, as Powell says, it's not this great big concrete lit at night parking garage. It's a one-car garage that's tucked in off the street, and people aren't going to need it, not even notice it.
Yeah, on this one, I agree with Pavel and Dan. I think it's, I don't think it's going to alter any of the essential character of the area, the locality. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion that the granting of a variance will not alter the essential character of the locality.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Okay, now to the fourth standard, that the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner. Attorney?
And, yeah, I mean, I've already explained some of the analysis here. I think the standard is relatively self-explanatory. Essentially, the board is looking at whether the applicant's actions or actions taken by the prior owner have contributed to the hardship for which the applicant is seeking zoning relief. Again, at one time, the inquiry was focused on whether or not the applicant purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction from which they were seeking relief. I would say that the courts have sort of backed away from that being the determinative factor and said that it's one thing that boards and courts will consider, but not necessarily the end-all, be-all for the analysis of this standard.
Any discussion on this criteria? Could I follow up with council if that's okay? On the setbacks, do we have any idea what the setbacks were when the house was purchased 40 years ago?
I do not.
There was no zoning in 71,
Well,
I can tell you that.
I will say from the warranty deed into Mr. Damon, which is included in the record, as I understand it, the property was conveyed to him in 1981. And it looks to me like there is a reference to a prior conveyance, which I assume may have been the actual lot split itself. And I would imagine, I mean, from the pictures that I've seen, it looks like the structure is old.
The oldest
So
part of town.
Yeah, I don't know what the setbacks would have been when the structure was built, when the lot was split. I would assume,
There weren't
based on
any.
what I'm seeing in the record, that both of those
There
things
was no
happened.
zoning in Gorham prior to 71.
Okay, yeah, and
I
then,
know that because I've been there for something else.
Well, prior to 71, but you
Prior
said the
to
house was
71.
81 was?
Well, he bought it in 81, but it was
Oh, okay.
built
yeah,
before that.
yeah, right,
Thank you
exactly.
for the clarification. Scott, is that consistent with your understanding?
As far as what the setbacks were? or-
Yeah, and
I think actually right here.
Well, I mean, I have looked back before on some of these, and what you see now, the majority of them have stayed the same in the tight urban area. 15 feet has been pretty consistent, with probably going back at least until the 80s. I don't know, I haven't looked back any farther than that, or anything else.
thank you. Any discussion from the board? All right, I'll entertain a motion that the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner.
We need to put some reasoning on the record, so I'll put thoughts on the record. I think that, we talked a little bit about this in the characteristics of the property. But I do not, the home was built in a time where what was required to exist in Gorham was different. This is a house from the horse and buggy era, and so the requirements were different when it was constructed, and that's certainly not the homeowner's fault, and neither are the easements and the setbacks, or the easement and the church parking lot on the side, and neither is the layout of the property. I am convinced, looking at the photos, that there's no other reasonable site that this structure could be placed and still give this gentleman safe vehicle access through Four Seasons. So for that reason, I find that it's not the homeowner's, due to the action of the homeowner. And I'll second the motion.
Thank you for putting reasoning on the record. I sort of jumped the gun there. Would anybody else like to put their reasoning on the record? I concur with Pavel's reasoning, so I won't make myself redundant, but with that, I'll entertain a motion that the hardship is not a result of the action taken by the applicant or a prior owner.
So motioned.
Second?
All those in favor? All those opposed? Were those all yeas? No abstention, okay.
Okay, so it's my understanding that the board's typical practice has been for me to draft, or for the board's counsel to draft findings of fact, and for you guys to adopt those tonight. So I have pretty fulsome findings here. I just need to fill in a couple things based on the deliberations that you just had. So does it make sense for us to call a brief recess? I can finalize these, circulate them to, do you guys usually print them out and review them, or do you review them on screen?
Usually
This is
print.
a much more sophisticated setup than I'm used to.
It's usually print and review.
Okay, all right.
The printer working this time?
Yeah, that's the question. The printer's working. or not.
Last week, or last month, the printer wasn't working.
Okay. So give me a few minutes, shouldn't take too long. I'll finalize these, and then email them to Scott to go upstairs and print.
Do we need to have a motion and a vote on all usually that's sort of what we do, or is that done now, or should we do that
Yeah,
after
the
procedurally?
board can take a vote to grant the variance, and I would recommend that you do that. I mean, you found that all
Right.
4 standards are met. The board can do that after it's reviewed the findings. It can do that now. I think it's up to you folks how you'd like to proceed.
Let's just do it now and
Yeah,
have all the votes
I think
taken.
I think now makes the most sense. Okay, so I will entertain is there any, first of all, before I do that, is there any discussion about all the standards being met? No? Okay, I will entertain a motion that the 4 standards to grant a variance from zoning space standards have been met. Do I?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? 6-1. The motion is passed.
So Courtney, instead, while he does that, I propose we go to other business. I have a couple items I want to bring up to the board. We could get that done, and then maybe he'll be done and we can adjourn.
I think that's reasonable. Any objections? Sounds like a plan, is that,
Yeah, fine by me.
okay?
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, Craig?
So I just found these last minutes. I haven't looked at the other ones. I'd like to propose that they be restructured such that if you look at the ones from the last meeting, let's see, go to page 2.
Give me 1 second, Craig, let me find those. What did I do with them?
the motion, the item is printed at the end of the discussion. And it seems to me the motion, the standard that we are discussing, because that's the first thing that's moved, that should be printed on the minutes. The discussion regarding that should follow that boldface. And then and then after that should be a boldface. The board voted 4-3 or 7-0. So we know what the action was taken. If that makes any sense. So typically, on page 3, Mark Curtis moved and Paul Paval seconded that the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. Period. Then the discussion surrounding that should follow. Then there should be a vote, the motion carried by 7 ayes. But if anybody follows.
I think I understand what you're saying is have the motion be the leader, have the discussion after, and then the tally at the end. Is that what you're saying, Craig?
Yeah, just the way it's set up, because you go to the hardship one.
I'm sorry, Paul, I'm like looking over your shoulder.
You're good.
There should be a heading, and that's where I think you do the motion. So the hardship on page 3 is the discussion for that appears above that.
Yeah.
So the motion should be, like on the top of that page, moved that the hardship is not the result. The discussion about that should follow. Then boldface, motion carried, motion denied, what was the vote? This is just weird to read this. You pick this up, normally a boldface then leads to discussion.
Pavel, go ahead.
My only concern with that, Craig, is that sometimes we do the discussion before the motion, right? So like tonight, we had discussion and then we moved and then we voted. I think, but I'm totally okay with breaking it up by sections and elements. I would just keep the,
I was going to say the
the
same.
minutes chronological.
I was going to say the same thing. I think the attorney was just writing it as the way we discussed it versus I think the way you're proposing, Craig, does make some sense from a sort of a analysis perspective, right? Like,
Well, yeah, anybody reading this, normally in parliamentary procedure, there's no discussion, specific discussion, until there's a motion on the floor. The motion doesn't get acted on, it gets seconded. Then you go, any discussion on the motion. The discussion ensues, then there's a vote. This wraps the whole thing up, and then you're going, okay, why is this underneath? The motion's already been carried.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. For anybody reading these, particularly me, unless I'm just strange, it's not logical. So that's just how I'd like to see them changed.
so procedurally, do you think it would be better for future, and obviously we handled this sort of how we have been handling this, but going forward, when we say, tonight I was just saying, are there any discussions, that we actually have a motion, that we move to a discussion, and then we put it in the record that we had a motion on the discussion, we go through the discussion, and then we go through a vote, so we'll kind of formalize, sort of to
Right.
your point,
It's one
the
block.
parliamentary procedure that we're,
Right, yeah.
I'm okay doing it that way. If anybody else has any
that makes
objections, I think we can make that modification. I think the minutes that are the way they're written last time is how we did it though in the hearing, if that makes sense. I don't have any problem with adjusting the minutes kind of reconfiguring the minutes the way you're proposing. I'm just saying, I think that's the way, I don't think we had a
Yeah, I mean, that,
formal motion to have discussion and then had a vote. I think we just, sort of what I did tonight, which is probably a little bit off.
yeah. It's just a presentation issue.
I think we fix it going forward and leave it as it is personally.
Good. And the other thing is, did anyone get this packet in the US mail?
No.
So I'd like the board to determine that we should get these as packets in the mail. I know everyone wants to cut costs, but I had computer troubles on this last packet, and the town's phone system is a nightmare. I could not even reach all day Thursday anyone that actually picked up the phone that I could say, can you resend, or is there a packet? It'd just be, I don't care what the cost is, I think we should get a packet in the mail so that we can look at it in advance. No need to print a second one at the meeting, except I guess whatever's needed for the public if they want to look on. That's my motion.
Well, it used to be that way, not that, what, a couple of years ago?
Right, used to
We
be.
used to get them in the mail a couple of
Absolutely.
years ago.
Yeah.
We were,
I emailed Danielle saying I didn't get anything in email, and she sent me a link to a folder where all the documents were.
Right, I got that too. This would just remove one stressor in my life anyway.
I mean, I have no problem with mailing the transcript before, ahead of time. I was mentioning tonight that I haven't received a updated code enforcement. I've sort of done it myself, but it's been a while. I don't know if there have been any updates, which is sort of why I've been using my iPad to use the town updated version to make sure that I'm using the latest and greatest. So maybe that's something else. Daniel, Holly, did you receive a code enforcement packet, book?
That?
Yeah.
No, I just use what's online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might be a part of the turnover that happened for our organizational.
Yeah, well, it's just, if possible, I for one would appreciate it.
Trying to think of what the procedure is here, if we can just make a motion and make it so, or if it's, if that's the way it works, but,
That's outside of our statutory authority.
I was gonna say, I don't think
We
we
just have to ask nicely.
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think we have that authority, but
Have to beg.
I could try. I will, Craig, I will take this up. I will email, call, talk to Danielle, see if we can make that happen. Is there anybody who does not care or want to receive it
That would be me.
by mail?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't need to
I
get it.
don't need it by mail.
Craig wants, Craig by mail. Why
Email
don't
is
we-
fine with me.
Why don't we ask this? Would anybody like it by mail? Craig, I realize you said yes. Anybody else? Okay. And updated code.
I did like the
For Holly.
link version of the email as opposed to the attachments.
Okay. Okay. So I will make that request on your behalf, Craig. I'll request a code. Do you want sort of a formal code packet?
Sure.
I think that's it.
And we all look at Ben.
Yeah, we'll just wait on Ben.
No pressure.
Should we recess?
Yeah, well, under.
Just a couple more minutes and I should be good.
Okay,
but-
motion to recess?
Motion?
I don't think we need to vote on a motion. No. Recess. back from recess. Thank you for everybody's patience. Procedurally, we just read through this on our own, make any changes, and then make a motion to
Sure,
adopt?
yeah,
Or do we read it out loud? Like
We
this?
can, no need to read it out loud. We can go page by page, and once all the board members are satisfied with first page, second page, so on, we can move on. Or if the board members want to shout out things that they're seeing as they go, that works too. I think it's sort of up to you folks.
Yeah, I think that's what we have been doing, is sort of identifying issues that we
group
see as
shout
we
out.
go, sort of shouting out as we go, sort of
Yeah.
approach. So as long as
Yeah.
you're okay with that,
Yeah, that works for me.
thank you.
I'm good. I read fast. Probably couldn't even zone that back house now, could you?
What's that?
You couldn't probably even put a house like this day and age. Because don't you require a certain amount of road frontage?
Yeah, but certain, like, in the village with water and sewer, you know, you probably still could do something like that. Plus, today they got them ADUs,
Right.
you know, which are allowed anyway.
I think your ordinance does allow for the creation of backlots, subject to a number of specific
But not
standards.
with that forgiveness, because been talking to Scott about that. They allow you don't have to put a private way in anymore you can create up to 2 backlots now.
Yeah, I
Which
mean,
is 4 units, because it says lots, so you put two duplexes on it, and you just need a driveway into it. After that, you gotta go with that private way. But it states, when you get back into the property, you have to meet
right.
zoning of that area. So if you need 200 feet, you only have 300, but you got it 400 way out back, then you got your lot. That was helpful. Because I was in talking to, not him, but Tom Poria, he's the zoning guy.
You see any issues?
No,
2 years.
I'm good with this as drafted.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am too.
I couldn't do something.
Did you folks
And now
also get
with
copies of
that
the
backlot change,
certificate
I can
of
do what
variance?
I wanna do.
Didn't print those
Nobody
out.
said to
I
me,
didn't know,
Um,
usually we just did the one,
"Private way," I says, Tom.
we had one that came in and chair signed it. I mean, the
I don't wanna sell
Emporia here
lots. I
signed
wanna
it. There wasn't anything,
Preserve what I have.
it didn't
but I
get
wanna
sent to
build-
the board or
I
anything
have a 2-family I live in.
last time.
I don't think we've typically looked at those.
Put
Okay.
a garage with living space over it or another single family. I couldn't do it because I don't have the frontage. She's talking to you. But
So, Mr. Chair,
You're just on air, you should make sure everybody knows that. Discussions.
Sorry.
We're still on the air.
you're live.
No cursing.
Did I swear?
That would have been me.
I was like, I don't think I swore.
I'm a pretty safe bet, too.
I'm from Philly, what are you gonna do? say good morning.
What else am I supposed to use for punctuation?
So, do we entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written unless anybody else has any objections or modifications that need to be?
I'd look for the board to make a motion to approve the written findings of fact and conclusions of law, and to authorize the chair to sign those findings on the board's behalf. Additionally, as I understand it from Scott, it will be the town manager who's going to sign the certificate of variance approval. So I'd also look for a motion from the board to authorize the town manager to sign that certificate on your behalf.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to, as town council so eloquently stated, to adopt the findings of fact as written and the conclusions of law as written. It will also, as part of the motion, allow me to sign
As chairman of the board.
as chairman and allow the, what was the last piece?
Town
Ben?
manager.
The town manager to sign, but what was the
To
certificate?
sign the certificate of variance approval.
Certificate of
on the
variance.
board's behalf.
Thank you, on the board's behalf.
So moved.
Seconded.
Seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Okay. With that, I think we can adjourn. All right. Adjourn. Thank you.
Motion
All
we
right.
adjourn?
Motion, move to adjourn.
Oh, move to adjourn. Second, granted.